Okay, in this video, I wanted to talk a little bit about making project specifications. We have a project idea in mind, we have a customer in mind, and so we envision in this process in this exercise of working on the design process, we envision the customer producing specifications that we refine and make more tangible for our project. And then also we develop a compliance plan so that at the end of the project we can tell, does the project meet the specifications? Okay, so what I wanted to do was just walk you through examples of submissions that we've seen in the past. So I just sort of randomly grabbed 4 submissions. These actually came from a different instructor. And so I want to give my commentary on what I think is good about these examples and what I would work on to improve. All right, so let's just go through these examples so that you'll have an idea of what I'm looking for. Okay, so the first one, I'm not going to judge the team name. You can come up with your own team name, but the customer on this one, the customer is supposed to be children and adults interested in the trick shot movement. Okay, yeah, I've seen a Dude Perfect YouTube video, I think. Anyway, I like that. I like that they use their imagination for a specific customer with a given interest. Maybe age 3 would be a little young, but I'm not going to quibble with that. All right, so that was good. Now let's look at these technical specifications. Okay, so the first one is meet launch distance to accurately reach cup on a consistent, somehow I think consistent basis. Yeah, they're the text didn't wrap in this cell, right? Yeah, on a consistent basis. Okay, I think that's pretty vague. When you come up with a technical specification, you really need to have a distance in mind. Okay, so you would say exactly what that would be. All right, so they get a little better on that with the compliance test plan. All right, the machine must be able to propel a ping pong ball via machine over the top of a standard table. Okay, I assume they mean ping pong table. I don't know, let's say a standard table in an engineering classroom and land into cups between 12 and 16 inches away. Okay, so I would have moved that, the actual distance that you want to fire it, into the specification. It's actually a specification, all right? And then you would refine the compliance plan by saying that you are going to demonstrate that you do this, okay? Demonstrate that your machine is capable of doing this. And what happens if you try your machine and you miss the cup? Does that mean your machine is a failure? I would expect that not necessarily. You might, what I would do on a compliance plan on this is say it would land in the cup a certain percentage of the time. Maybe you would say 50% of the time. Some number that you think you could build a prototype to meet. Okay, in general, you're going to want to build your, in a real design process, you want to build your compliance plan to meet the specification that the customer wants. Okay, but in this scenario that we're going through here, we realize we're working with a prototype and things aren't going to be perfect. So we come up with a test plan that we think this would be a reasonable thing for us to be able to make. All right. So in summary, I would have added more detail in how far I wanted this launch mechanism to work, and then I would tell more detail about how often it would land in the cups. Like maybe I'm going to do 10 trials and it's going to land in the cup 5 times. Okay, so something more tangible than what they have here. Okay, able to accurately shoot ping pong ball into red solo cup. Well, that seems like it's tied to this compliance test plan. All right, so you could have 2 separate things like this, but then your compliance test plan would be tied together to talk about how you would meet both of these specifications. All right, so they do get more specific into the size of the red solo cup, but they don't define what consistently land means. Okay, so maybe you'd say 80% of the time, something like that, something you could test. And when you do your compliance test plan, normally you'd have a number of trials specified, like I'm going to launch this 10 times, it's going to land inside the cup 8 times or 5 times or whatever you think is a reasonable number. Okay? All right, the next specification is have the ability to adjust the vertical angle of the launcher so that the maximum distance is affected. Okay. All right, so there's some, word choice here that, I would quibble with a little bit. A maximum distance is how far you could get this thing to shoot at a certain angle. So I would have left off the word maximum so that distance is affected. So you shoot this thing at different, length or range based on the angle. Okay, and so yeah, like that. That's a decent specification. You would probably want to incorporate, though, more tangible numbers into the specification side of this. So in this particular example, we have that the vertical launch angle is going to go between 0 and 30 degrees in order to affect how far the thing can shoot. All right, so I would have moved the 0 to 30 degrees into the specification. Okay, and then whenever you do the compliance test plan, envision yourself actually demonstrating this to someone to show that you met your specification. So you would use wording like, we will demonstrate that our machine is capable of launching items at various angles between 0 and 30 degrees. Okay, so you had the specification. The compliance test plan is to show how you meet the specification. Probably on the specification side also, do they mean continuous angles between 0 and 30 degrees? Could I hit like 17.4? Could I hit 23.2? Or am I going to go in steps of like 0, 10, 20, and 30? Okay, I'd be more specific about that as well, because the more specific you can get, the better your customer can understand what you're trying to do in the first place, and it would eliminate miscommunications. All right. The next one says we must meet mobility and accessibility standards. Well, that's really vague, okay, but it does get more specific over here in the compliance test plan. All right, the machine and all of its parts must weigh under 8 pounds. It must be easy to assemble together into one piece so that you can transport it. Finally, it must be simple to remove the battery pack so that if the batteries die, you can replace them and put the machine back in place. Okay, well, that's very specific. That would be a great specification, okay? All right, that's more of a specification than a compliance plan. All right, so once you have the specification over here, essentially envision moving this text over here, and your compliance test plan is we will weigh the machine and see if the sum of its parts is less than 8 pounds, okay? We will also demonstrate that it can be assembled into one piece for easy transportation. We will also demonstrate that the battery pack is easy to remove. All right, so specification, compliance test plans, separate those out. Okay. Next, it says must have some degree of color, has to look relatively good. Okay, I get that. That is an important component, and that's can be part of a technical specification. Over here on the compliance side, it says the machine must be aesthetically pleasing. Cardboard components must be painted, and outside of wheels must not be yellow. Okay, so apparently they object to the yellow wheels that they had. Okay, so these to me look more like specifications. Okay, this is so vague. Maybe you got that from the customer, but you would ask more questions from the customer and say, what do you mean by aesthetically pleasing? And the customer might respond, well, I want it to be painted. You get that idea. So you move this back over into the technical specification side, and then the compliance test plan would be possibly you would do a customer survey. You do something that would show that this specification is met in some fashion. So maybe you you survey 3 people and ask them about the aesthetics of the machine. That would be more like a compliance test plan and more like what I'm looking for. Okay, so that's example 1. All right, so let's close that one out and talk about example 2. Okay. In the second one, we have a customer and it says children and adults. Well, that's doesn't that include everybody? Okay, so I would look for more specificity here about the customer so that, that's part of this process. What do you have in mind for desirable features of your project and who would be interested in it? Okay, so I would, my feedback on this would be to be more specific about the customer. Okay, here's the technical specifications they started to offer. We'll shoot 5 ping pong balls in 1 minute. Okay, so it's definitely about a rate of fire here. So that's perfectly fine. There's some numbers in it. I like that about it. And in the compliance test plan, my objection here would be I would like to see language that shows how you're going to do the test plan. So, it would be more like we will set a stopwatch and we will demonstrate that you can shoot 5 or more ping pong balls in 1 minute. Okay, so you see what I'm saying? It's close. I like it, but just make it more descriptive, I guess is the word I would be looking for. Okay. Next, it says, disregarding human error, the launcher will shoot the ping pong balls in the bucket/cup. All right. So, yeah, I think I understand what they're saying. They're understanding if you aim it right, it will shoot balls into the bucket and cup. All right. But it's not clear to me how this would be aimed, and this phrase disregarding human error, I'm not sure I like that in there. I would probably take that part out. And you're trying to figure out how to accommodate bad aiming. Well, I think that's implicit. You would assume this would be aimed correctly and able to accomplish the task. Okay, so here on the compliance test plan, it says using a measuring tape, the launcher will demonstrate that it can launch the projectile into a bucket/cup from 4 feet away. Okay, so my complaint here is, where did 4 come from for this specification? I get it from down here. The ping pong ball will be able to cover a distance of 4 feet, but that would be more like the compliance test plan for this specification, not this specification. Okay, the second specification is more about accuracy, and again, like we talked about on the previous project, maybe you would say it would land in the bucket 3 times out of, or I'm sorry, at least 5 times out of 10, some reasonable number showing what is your plan. You're going to launch this thing 10 times and it's going to land in the bucket 5 times. Okay, so you get the idea there, hopefully. All right. So ping pong ball will cover a distance of 4 feet. Launcher will be easily mobile and operated by a single person. You see my objection there. This doesn't relate to that. Okay, so you could easily fix that. Okay, the launcher will be able to hit from a horizontal and approximately 45-degree angle. Okay, well, that, my feedback there is that doesn't really make sense. All right, you'd have to clean that up. And over here on the compliance test plan, it says the launcher angle will be able to be adjusted in 2 dimensions. I suppose that means both the, you can adjust this vertically, up and down angle, or horizontally, left to right. And, the compliance test plan is more like a specification in this case. You would probably want to put some angles in there. They say 45 degrees, but what I think they mean is in the X direction, you'll be able to rotate the angle between 0 and 45 degrees, and in the Y direction, maybe the same angles, but you get the idea. You need to put some numbers to this. And then the compliance test plan should be related to these numbers and that you demonstrate that it can happen. Okay. So it looks like, part of the problem is that these columns are just The rows are just out of order. Okay, the launcher will be easy to use by a single person. That seems to fit more over here. The launcher will be easy and mobile enough to be operated by a single person. Okay, that's actually, that's a specification, easy to use by a single person. But, you would need to define, I think it'd be helpful to define what's easy to use, okay? It could be in terms of weight, it could be in terms of how hard it is to load, those kind of things. Just be more specific would be my suggestion on that, okay? The project will be able to land in buckets spread out at a width of 2 feet, all right? I think this compliance test plan is more related to the launcher being adjustable in both dimensions. Okay, so my feedback here would be make sure these line up, and you see this common theme that I'm having, that on the specification side you need to have some numerical things that help you specify it, and on the compliance side you need to have a test plan that verifies the specification. Okay, so this video is getting pretty long. I'm going to cut this one off, and I'll do another video for the other 2 specifications.